Think of something you could easily be afraid of, like a snarling dog or I don't know, scorpions or tarantulas or whatever suits your fancy. A truck bearing down on you. All got something? And you don't have to share it. Now, I want you to imagine that you start with an image that is about that big of whatever it is you're afraid of. And notice your feelings as you imagine an image this big of what you're afraid of. Okay? And now I want you to fairly gradually, kind of look at my hands a little bit, very gradually make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And keep going until it's bigger than this room, bigger than Winter Park, bigger, 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 bigger than the known universe. And notice how your feelings shift along the way.
We don't exist anymore to feel.
Well, hold on for just a moment. I want everybody to have a chance at this. Now, if you know, I tried to demonstrate it as you were doing it. If that was confusing to you, take a moment now and just do it again on your own. So you make that real small thing and then you make it bigger, 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 until it's way out beyond Saturn, the size of it. Okay? Now, how do your feelings change when you do that? Let me just, for the simplicity, I'm going to say what most people feel, and then if you feel something different, let me know and we'll discuss it. For most people, it goes something like this. When it's very, very, if this is intensity of fear in this case, because I've chosen something you're afraid of, and this is size going this way, then initially, when it's real, real tiny, you probably don't have any feelings at all. It's like a fly speck or a little piece of fluff or something like that. So you have essentially no feelings at all for a while. Then at a certain point, you start getting scared. Is that right? And that gets more and more intense for a certain time. And then at a certain point, something changes and you have a different feeling. A different feeling takes over. Is that right? Feeling of joke or unreality or ridiculous or something like that? Is that? Now, did anybody have anything different than that? This is the usual. So essentially what you've got is you've got three different regions here. And there's a threshold that at a certain point, you know, depending on what it is, if it's a schnauzer that's this big, probably isn't very scary, but if it's a tarantula, maybe it would be. I don't know. It'll depend on content. But at some point, you go from essentially zero fear to something you call fear, and then that changes in intensity. And at a certain point, you have something else, and it could be humor. You could have lots of different words for it, but humor or unreality or something, but it's a very different kind of feeling, right? Now, when you explore submodalities like size, often the relation will only work in a certain range. But if you have something like size or brightness, if you make it too big or too bright, it will give you a whole different response. And that's important in what some of the things that we'll be doing later, because we'll be utilizing submodalities to change your response in a particular situation. Now, just staying with this for a moment, you all picked something you could be afraid of, right? Just imagine it the way it would occur in real life now, and notice if your feeling's any different than it used to be.
Can you repeat again?
Imagine, let's say I was afraid of dogs. And now I would like you to then imagine a dog, you know, a snarling dog, life-size, and see if your experience is the same as it was before we did this little experiment. Because for some people it will change. Not everybody, but for some people it will change, and this is a very, very fast way to deal with some people's fears. Or other responses, like wanting to drink alcohol, or many, many other things, where there's a very sort of rigid kind of response curve to size of something. Like a friend of mine worked with a guy who was an alcoholic, and when he had the urge to drink, he saw a martini about 7 feet tall, a little taller than he was, and He really, that really drew his attention and would lead him to drink. Now this was a piece to use. It wasn't the solution, but it was a piece to start getting a handle on his uncontrollable desires. Okay, any questions about this? This is called a threshold.